Here, I actually need some help with something. Do you think you could help me out with a little spooky story time?
Of course.
Awesome. All right, so TKC members, our story actually has some spots where we're gonna need your help. So some polls are gonna pop up on the screen and we're gonna need you to vote in those polls because you are going to decide what happens in our spooky story, all right? So is everyone ready?
Ready.
Ready.
All right, here we go. So a long time ago, there was a spooky old house across the street from NRG Stadium. Toro always hated waking up and looking at it. It wasn't that it was ugly, there was just something off about it. Maybe it was because when you walked by it smelled like rotten eggs. Ugh. Or maybe it was because at night it sounded like there were small animals running around inside. Or maybe it was because Toro heard the house was haunted. One Halloween, Toro's friend, JJ Watt, dared Toro to go inside the haunted house. Toro wasn't scared, but he couldn't help but wonder, is that house actually haunted? Even still, Toro decided to be brave and he agreed to go inside. It was already dark when Toro arrived at the house with JJ, and Toro noticed there was a full moon out. Even from the street, Toro could smell the damp, rotting wood the house was made from. Slowly, he walked up to the front door, and as he did, the door opened. Toro froze. From behind him, he heard JJ say, "It was probably the wind, right?" Toro was starting to second guess his decision when suddenly a light came on in a room on the second floor, and Toro noticed there was a ladder to his left that led up into the room. So now it's time for our first decision. Does Toro go through the front door, or does Toro take the ladder? Toro is going to take the ladder to the second floor. Okay, now, Gabby, do you think you want to start reading from here?
Sure.
All right.
All right. Toro looked over to the ladder. It seemed sturdy enough. He crept through the grass and started his ascent up the ladder, one foot after another. As he made it to the top, he slowly peered inside the dimly lit room. The light was coming from a lamp that was laying on the floor, but other than that, the room was empty. Toro started to pull himself into the room when one of his feet gave out from beneath him. A rung of the ladder had broken. Toro struggled and used his upper body to pull himself through the window, and he fell hard onto the floor. He gathered himself and ran right out the room. As he exited, he saw that off to the right was a staircase that would take him back to the first floor. And to his left were two doors, one red and one blue. Which door should he go through?
All right, it's time for another poll. So there are two doors for Toro to go through. There's a red door and a blue door. Looks like red door is our winner. So Toro is going to go through the red door. All right, now, Jackie, it's your turn to read.
As he touched the door to open it, the door flung open and Toro could see text on the ground right inside the doorway. The text said, "Do not go one step further." But curiosity had already overcome him, and he paid no attention to the warning. He walked past the words without a second thought and walked into the room. He peered into the darkness, but he could barely make out what was inside. As Toro's eyes began to adjust, he saw a large metal box in the center of the room. The lid was nowhere to be seen. Toro crept up to the box and quickly looked inside. In the center of the box was a glass jar filled with...
What was the jar filled with? The TKC members get to decide. That is right. We have another poll to figure out what is inside the jar. And I will tell you, inside the jar are going to be super spooky, super scary candies. That's right. The jar is going to be filled with candy, but you get to decide what candy. Your choices are Reese's, Skittles, or Snickers. Here we go. The results are Skittles. Skittles are the winner. All right, now I'm going to take it back over from here. So Toro picked up the jar of Skittles, but as soon as he did, the house began to shake. Toro cradled the jar like a football and began to run back from where he came. He hurled over a newly created chasm in the floor. Before he knew it, Toro could see the front door, but it was closing in front of his very own eyes. Toro braced himself and ran right through the wood, busting through it like a running back rushing into the end zone. As the wood splintered around him, he dove from the front porch and landed in the front yard with a thud. Toro clambered to his feet and ran away from the house onto the sidewalk where JJ stood frozen. "What happened in there?" JJ asked. Toro just shrugged, not entirely sure what he had seen or experienced, but he had a prize. A giant jar of Skittles! Proudly, Toro started walking back to NRG Stadium with JJ in tow. The next morning, Toro walked out of the stadium and strolled back down the street to see the haunted house in the daylight. But the house wasn't there. Just an empty lot. And Toro never saw the house again.